Hello, my lovelies, and welcome to the Heartland Hot Dish, where we come back to the table to rediscover our connections and the meaning to the food and savory gateway that is the treasures of the Great Lakes Foodways region. Join us as we rediscover the traditions and stories woven into the fabric of the Heartland cuisine, from the iconic dishes that define the Midwest to the hidden gems waiting to be discovered. We'll take you on a mouth-watering journey through a diverse culinary landscape of the Great Lakes. Get ready to indulge your senses, ignite your appetite, and explore the rich tapestry and flavors that make up the Heartland Hot Dish. I'm your host, Kieran Hales, and today we're going to be diving into the power of a guild. I know it's a medieval story that I get to tell today. So we've got a wonderful guest today from the Michigan Cheese Guild, Arend. I've got a couple of our wonderful podcasters, Ashlyn and Lee, joining us as well. Today, I'm excited to really talk about the medieval world of England and the small towns that I grew up in. But Arend is probably going to be talking a little bit more about cheese in our world. Welcome, Arend. How are you doing today? Yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about
Fantastic.
medieval
Thanks
England,
for having me.
is what I have learned today. I probably read up more about candle makers and grocers, not cheese guilds. One of those random things you do not know about me, and
Oh
most people
yeah.
don't. When I graduated as a chef in London, I became an honorary member of the Butchers Guild. I went to the Butchers Guild in central London. That's where I did my graduation dinner.
Oh
Somehow, as
wow.
a chef, you cook on your graduation, you don't get to celebrate. So I cooked for everyone that sponsored me, my mum, and I became an honorary member
Yeah,
of the
right.
Butchers Cheese Guild in that world, which was kind of a crazy way of this conversation. I got excited, like, I should know more about the guild I'm in. So I've got this wonderful little manual that gives you all the rules of what you have to
Yeah.
do to be in the Butchers Guild. Actually tells you have to go to church once a week, which I was like, oh, that's not the
Oh
qualifications
my
in the Michigan
goodness.
Cheese Guild. Okay, good.
We
There
don't
you go.
have that
There's a bunch
qualification.
of interesting history around why
Not
guilds
yet
started,
anyway.
and it was a way to protect it. Off Mike earlier is telling Aaron like really cheese guilds were, or guilds in general, were formed to protect the monopoly of a specific industry. So I guess we're going to make sure that Aaron isn't doing that on the cheese side of everything. So, Aaron, tell us, Michigan Cheese
No.
Guild.
No
You said it was about a
monopolies. Not at
year
all.
old now.
Yeah. Yes. So I think we signed the documents to form the 501c6 in April of 23,
Yeah.
and it's been a lot of fun. It's been quite a bit of work, but it's been a lot of just organic, kind of natural come togetherness, if you will, of a few businesses that all have a common thread, which is artisan cheese in Michigan. And we really formed. There was a few of us, Monger's Cheese Provisions and Zach Berg out of Berkeley, Zingerman's Creamery, of course, out of Ann Arbor, Leelanau Cheese out of Traverse City area, and the Cheese Lady location out of Traverse City. We were all just kind of networking and collabing, talking about how to market our businesses. Our friends at MDARD were aware of that and wanted to help us move things along, and offered to fund our partnership with them in the National Restaurant Association show last May. And so that was really the tipping point, if you will, that kind of led us to being like, all right, let's form an entity, and push this along further. And then you go to a show and you start putting pictures on social media, and people are like, "Hey, we want to join this cool cheese club," and then you launch a website, and then you're the real deal, I guess. So I mean, we're still we've picked up a number of members now, and we're gaining steam. We're raising money, and we have some marketing
Yeah,
initiatives that we're
so
looking to
as far
approach here
as
in the
like the
next year. So
whys,
happy to
it's
talk about
really
those
there
things
in
today.
order to promote Michigan cheeses, to promote
Hmm.
Michigan cheese businesses. I go back to like the Wisconsin
Yeah.
Cheese Board of like what a great job they do, or the potatoes that get sold by Idaho, like that wonderful giant potato driving across the country. It is a small version of wanting to do something like that, get that word out about Michigan foods and put them out there.
100%, yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the Wisconsin Cheese Association and Cheese Guild, because when you go to some of these shows, you walk in there, it's a bit intimidating, like the presence that they have. I mean, it's impressive. And then you go to the Michigan area, and we don't have a whole lot. And so we're trying to change that. And so what we opened up, a trade organization, is a 501c6. It's a nonprofit trade organization. So we are focused on raising money so that we can market a great Michigan dairy and cheese artisan products, and also help with funding in a number of different ways for businesses, not only in marketing but in educational endeavors as well. And so we want to educate. We want to promote the food and tourism industry in the state of Michigan, and
Yeah, so one
we've
of the
launched
things,
some
Aaron is
campaigns to do
also
that already. So
the,
we're
the
excited
owner
about it.
of the Zingerman's Creamery cheese here in Ann Arbor. Ashlyn, I know that especially foods over at the deli, you probably get to a lot of those trade shows and see that kind of differential. Is it hard? Has it been hard to see those like larger organizations push out some of the smaller vendors in those shows, like being less visible, less able to be out there?
Oh, definitely. It's hard to find more of that artisan cheese out in the world now. You go to the trade shows and you see a lot of the more commercial products being pushed at some of those big trade shows, and not as much room for
Yeah, that
the more artisan
expensive
products.
getting
But
to
those are
those
the really
shows. I
special
know
things
that
that you're
like
gonna find in the cheese
we've done
world
a
now.
few from my side of wedding side of the industry, and just getting to the shows, the hotels, the getting in there, the fee to get in, the setup booth, to ship all of those things there. And that's something the Cheese Guild can help other members with, even if they're going independently, not as the whole Cheese Guild. Because you said on those trade shows, you can't really go as the guild, but you can support the members going to those kind of things.
Exactly. It depends on the show. So there are some shows you can go as the guild, and then you can market guild members' products. There's some where we want to subsidize the cost, right? And it's not all about shows, but that's part of marketing in our world. I'll tell you another really fun project is we're partnering with the Meyer Corner Market stores. There's 4 in the state of Michigan now. It's a little bit different format than their traditional stores. There's one in Grand Rapids, East Lansing, Royal Oak, and
Oh, that's
Detroit,
so cool.
and there's going to be a Cheese Guild cooler in each store. Um, so, from a small artisan maker standpoint, there's a new maker in the state of Michigan called Charlevoix Cheese out of the Charlevoix area. So, farmstead operation. I believe they're inside their first year. They're a member of the
Yeah, there
guild.
you go.
We've already got them approved all their products available at Meyer, right? And so, if you're just out there as a maker, you don't even know the infrastructure of how to get your products approved at some of these places. That could be a multi-year process, right? But you come to the guild and you're like, hey, we got you. We're going to help try to figure this out. We work with Carmela Foods, who actually got all their products approved at Meyer. And so, we have a select number of products now from the guild that are approved via these Meyer Corner Market stores, and you're going to be able to go there and get Michigan, made artisan cheeses in each one of those stores
I
in
think
our
that
branded
sense
cooler.
of
So
abundance.
it's a really
We were
fun
up
project.
in wine country up in Traverse City for Zingerman's food tour pre-COVID now, so it must be like 5 years ago. And we were chatting with them, and every single producer up there is like a sense of abundance. They helped everyone out. Their next door neighbor, who was another wine producer, like, we do not compete with each other. We're competing with the big boys. We're competing with California. We're competing with
Right.
France. We're competing with people we can't even get up. The only way we can do that is coming together and have that sense of abundance within our community. And it sounds much more like that's the sense of what the Cheese Guild is up to in trying to take the expertise that you have as a more established, longer run cheese business, to have the expertise to go after the grants, to go after the support. Because the legislation behind the cheese industry is why the British
Right.
industry kind of
That's
got
right.
shut down. Back in the 1980s, my mom and dad used to drive out to local farms. You get cheese at every small local farm in England. It was easily done. And they changed the legislation in Europe, the EU, and it shut down. I think it was something like 87%, and somebody's going to be like, "Yeah, you just made up that percentage." I kind of remember it being about 87% within the. There is a lot. It was a lot, and it shut him down within like 3 to 4 years.
It was a
and
lot
so the
anyway.
UK
Right.
really followed those rules, and all of these small. You weren't going to find them in a store. You had to go get them from the farm. Disappeared overnight. It did a lot of damage to the UK cheese industry, and it has spent its entirety after that trying to rebuild, even to today. Those small independent producers don't exist anymore, and it got to larger businesses. So being able to take somebody who's been in it for a year and get them in stores, I mean, that is, you wish, when the creamery started, being able to do that from day one would have been immensely.
That's right. Yeah. Well, and look, I've had the privilege of living in other states. I've lived in a few other states, and born and raised in Michigan. I think Michigan folks are loyal to their brands, in my opinion, relative to others from other states. And you look at what beer has done in the state of Michigan. People want a product that's grown in their backyard here, that's made in their backyard. They want that. They want a local product. It's a wonderful ag state, wonderful agricultural state, extremely diverse in the products that we offer here in the state of Michigan. We're a great dairy state. But for whatever reason, we don't have quite the artisan cheese makeup and quite the artisan dairy product makeup that some other states like Wisconsin and that you find in the Northeast. So look, there's a market for our product. It's really about like, all right, how do we come together and do this collectively? And there's plenty of room for the handful of providers that are makers that are out there, right? So we recognize that, and it's been a lot of fun to collaborate with the other groups. And I think to a point you brought up a little earlier, Kieran, is just the specialty of what we do, the equipment, the regulation. It's even being a part of the ZCOB here is wonderful. Zingerman's Creamery being a part of the ZCOB. But the regulations that we have and some of the equipment we have is just different than, say, Corman Farms, right? Or Zingerman's Deli. It's just different. And so I have to call, Josh and Gary from Leland on Cheese from time to time and compare notes. And so it's just helpful if you have an issue with your aging room, and the air handler in your aging room, who has the expertise for that? And we have a little network now.
You formed
we
a
can
social
help solve
group,
those things.
called it a
Because
guild.
it's a
so I get to
specialty
talk
type
about
of item.
medieval history for myself. But I think that power
100%.
of
Yes.
having the support that exists and knowing that the guild is there for the betterment of all and not one, there is a beautiful side to that. When I think of like specialty foods for Ashland over at the deli, I think back to Stitchelton. So Stitchelton cheese, a blue cheese from England. Its original name of Stilton back in the day. Stilton will come after me now. I'll probably get a NDA. So yeah, do not say this anymore. But I got to work out there. It's an American making a cheese out there as well, which is amazing. But the knowledge of that had been lost, and so it's an unpasteurized blue cheese. They've got like the cows are like an arm's reach away from where they make the cheese. The pipes go right under the sidewalk and go right into the milk yard, and then they get to be making the cheese from the warmth of just milking them. So there's no transportation of this milk, which is magical. But for them, the legislation of being an unpasteurized cheese is crazy, and then to be able to get it to the U.S. is like an insanely complicated process. And so the power of what you're forming with your partners to be able to help the next generation or even yourselves and be better. Like it's more and more on the backs of everything you've been doing. I know you've gone after grants for the creamery yourselves. You've gone after funding for the Michigan Guild. Ashland, for you, I mean, when you see those kind of supports as far as guilds coming in, how does that affect your kind of on the floor of being at the deli and looking at specialty foods?
It's so helpful. That's one of the biggest things I think people ask for when they come to the deli. We're kind of a big tourist attraction in Ann Arbor. So when people come to the deli, they want to buy Michigan cheese. That's the biggest question we get a lot of times on, really heavy tourist traffic weekends is what kind of cheeses do you have that are from Michigan? And there's only really a few. And most of them are things that we carry that are from people that are in the Cheese Guild. So it's really good to see that we're getting more of a platform for more cheesemakers to be able to start making cheese and selling cheese in Michigan and have more Michigan-based agricultural
Do you
products because
see
we are such a good ag
other
state. We just
guilds
didn't
like
really have
that
a
from
platform for it
other
before.
food producers at the deli? What other guilds like or guild like? Because they don't have to be called a guild. It's that cool thing of like, right? Do you know where the name Privy? You've heard the
Right.
name Privy Council before?
It sounds cool though.
No. Okay. So Privy Council was the council that would run
not.
central London.
No.
It was called the Privy Council. Sorry, listeners. Now I'm going to diverge. I told Aaron this is easy because I love my random information. The Privy Council were the people that were closest to the king. And it was nearly always a king back then. And it was the access to him. So if you were close to him, your access was really high. You were part of that Privy Council. The best job, do you know what the best job to have to be close to the king all the time? Think about it. No. Nope. It's your bathroom attendant.
The
Yeah.
gesture.
Straight up, you wanted to be there with the potty for him at all times to have access, to manage the Privy Council. And it became ceremonial very quickly, and there were other people to assist. But then you were always there. You were at the king's side, you had his ear. And so when you talk about guilds, a lot of the guild members were part of that Privy Council because they were the people with the wealth. That's what the wealth came from. When I was researching this, I was looking up grocers. And when you think of the Grocers Guild, you think of like a grocery store. That is not what Grocers Guilds were. Grocers Guild back in the day was spice merchants. They were basically the people that brought in the most expensive things into, central London. It was mostly London and Norwich were the two big cities in the UK. Sorry, I know we're talking about Michigan and the heartland, but I got to go back to my roots. But they would be shipping in those things, those special things that people couldn't get access to that they could control. They also controlled like the training and the membership of the guild. So is that something that you guys might be doing, like to help cheesemakers, the employees more than necessarily the businesses? That's something you might drift into in the future. I know I'd said, again off mic earlier, like I'd like to come back to this because I think that while it's not complicated to necessarily form a guild or a 501c6, it does sound like a 401k to me, but 501c6 is somebody's got to do the work, and you need an example out there. There's not a lot of YouTube videos that are going to get there, and the world has got there. I would hesitant to say like this podcast might be a nice way to check in on this. It might be a really fun way to help somebody who wants to do this for their specific type of food product in the future.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I threw the 501c6 out there is because in the nonprofit world, there's 501c3, there's different labels. Yeah, there is. And so, which one should you be, right? If you are out there, and you are collaborating with some other people in a unique niche, no matter what it is, whether it's food or any other business, and you're thinking about, forming something, what should you form? We got some legal counsel. It didn't cost that much. And they're like, you need to do this if you want to raise money, if you want to educate. And to your point, and I'm glad that this is a nice lead in to some things I want to plug. The guild is educating, our members. And so we're not only makers, but we're specialty retailers. So like Zingerman's Deli, right, is a member of the guild. And we've got some, Monger's Cheese Provisions is not a maker. They're a specialty retailer. And so the guild is this area where the entire infrastructure for artisan production from, the raw material at the farm all the way to the end user, we're in the middle of all that. And we want to represent those folks in their best interests. So the logistics providers like Carmela Food and our Hurt, they're a part of the guild. The specialty retailers. What type of training do those entities need? One thing they need is PCQI training, right? So we actually have a PCQI class coming up that the Guild is offering at Zing Train this June. And it's more so for the makers, right? But anyone who's in, the bakery business, the cheese making business, like have a production food facility, you probably need at least one PCQI trained individual. And so we have PCQI instructors inside the guild. They're teaching a class. We're going to use it as a fundraiser, right? So you're going to pay a little bit of a premium, and some of that's going to go to the guild. But it's something that, hey, at the creamery, we need 2 folks recertified. We're going to have them in the class. There's other people, within the Zingerman's community that may need it, so we're going to offer the class. Leland All Cheese is going to lead the instruction of that. But we're also offering a grants class, right? So we have a class, a webinar just on grants. So, the creamery, Zingerman's Creamery, was fortunate enough to get a MDARD grant last year. We used a grant writing service. They're going to lead folks on a tutorial of how to write grants and how to go through the world of grants. And so, we want to be, we want to be an authority on education for the entities that need specialty education within the cheese and dairy world. And so it's like, where do you go in Michigan if you want specialty information? You come to the guild first. And we can help source that information, or we can train you directly, right? And so those are things that we're building out. And in the process, we need to raise funds. And so it's a ways for us to raise funds.
It fits like a
And
glove.
I brought Kieran a wonderful hoodie. It's made by Threads in Traverse City, Michigan. They're making our merch right now. We've got a merch store online. You can go online. You can buy our merch.
You're wondering.
And Kieran is where we got a logo. The logo is made by Lana and Emma at Zingerman's Creamery. That's actually a Zingerman's Creamery goat brie. Is our logo. But it's supposed to be blue water and like a sun setting, in Lake Michigan or one of the Great Lakes, right? So that's what we're trying to represent with the colors there. So yeah, merch, classes, that's how we're, I got a hat on, right? So we got hats, hoodies, we got shirts. So we're in the fundraising business, and we're trying to do it creatively so that we can educate our folks as well.
When we talk about like the Wisconsin Cheese Board, or you talk about the Idaho Potato, I don't know if they're a board or whatever they are, but like they're raising money to do those large advertisements. I also flick back to like Pure Michigan kind of, we, back in the day of the wedding business, when we first started, Pure Michigan had got that huge campaign out. It was everywhere. It was on the TV all the time. And Pure Michigan came out to the farm and did stuff with us. I mean, that is a group of people trying to help Michigan get out there and put their name out there. I think that's the power of what this is, and our dollars of supporting something like the Michigan Cheese Guild is about bringing Michigan itself up and being in that place. And I think that's the way to think of it more than I'm just trying to get a donation. I'm just trying to put Michigan more on the map of this thing where it should already have been. I've talked about my past, like I lived in 27 countries. I'm here for a reason. There's a pretty magical agricultural base here that isn't seen around the world. Like the ability to grow what you can here, the things that are around you, the expertise that exists, the history, the diverseness of the cultures that came to Michigan and settled is kind of fun to deal with. I'd always joked, so G. Hayes, a good friend of Miss Kim, and like when we did the first dinner at the farm, I said that years from now, 200 years from now, there'll be a big British and Korean movement in Michigan, and no one will understand why. I kind of want to stick with that because it would be kind of fun. Last night we had our 10th anniversary out at the farm, and I was making a German beef dish that my mom used to make after Sunday dinners. I think that's the bit of like the whys and the whats. It's about where you come from and the piece. You always bring a piece of your history. One of the other podcasts we've got out there is about deep dish pizza and talking about pizza pie. And the history of that comes from the mechanic's tray that came out of like the manufacturing of cars. So they would empty out like the tray with all the tools in. That's why there's deep dish pizza. That is it, right? And you're like,
oh, that makes sense.
It's very rooted in us, right?
Wow.
And I think when we talk about Michigan cheeses, that's the same piece of the whys and the whats and the real reasons. And they can be 1 year old, they can be 200 years old. History is in the eye of the beholder. My village, where I come from, was founded in 900, right? So, like, history is a completely different piece of what it is.
Oh, my gosh.
Lee, for this side of talking about guilds, I think the power of that produce that comes in and the work at the bakehouse. I know that we've got a podcast out there about rhubarb. We're talking about a lot of individual ingredients. do you see things from your like bakehouse perspective of guild members, what there are? I know there's a lot of milling and different things going on. What do you see on your side of that, Lee?
Uh, well, we recently, fairly recently, became part of the Bread Makers Association, and Amanda, who's the main bread manager in the bakehouse, she's actually a guild member, and she's the one person in the bakehouse that's actually a guild member, and that's fairly recent. Um, as far as the milling goes, you mentioned history, and when I first came to the bakehouse,
Yeah, you are.
I have a background in research. I'm a art historian, and I'm now a culinary historian. But I have a research and writing, publishing background, and so when I first came to the bakehouse, although I was in production, pastry production, Amy and I, we had a long conversation about what else I could bring to the table, and it just so happens when I got here, the whole new whole grain milling mission was just getting underway, and so one of the first historic projects that I worked on is I did a whole history on Michigan milling and going back to the early 19th century and the settlement, and that was really exciting, and so and actually Hazem, who's I'm not quite sure what to call him, but he's sort of our bread guru, our sourdough bread guru, and he's actually the in-house miller now, and so we've got 2 stone mills, and so we're trying to build up the milling thing, and then we're also reaching out. We're getting a lot of grains in from local farmers, so we're trying to support the local grain economy as much as we can.
That was a
And
big
I'm
one
not
back,
aware
like,
of
as
a
far as
milling
history
guild
of
per
guilds.
se, but
That's a big boy. I mean, if we talk about like the history of things you need, bread
yeah,
was way up
yeah,
there. I mean, it is that thing that when you see inflation happen, we're written right now, the cost of bread is one of the things that you hold back as long as possible. Like if the cost of bread goes up in your country in any meaningful way, it affects everyone. So milling guilds were a big thing back home. Yeah, I don't know that if everyone. Yeah. Yep.
It still is. Yeah, there's a grain millers association that is it's really big in the They actually have a get together in Mackinac Island every year. It's now from an artisan standpoint, that's a little different. There could be some artisan guilds as well, but there's a grain millers association here in the United States. It's a big deal. Yeah.
Would that would that be mostly the industrial mills or the
Yeah.
large
Yep.
commercial industrial mills?
Exactly. Yeah.
Because what the bakehouse has done is we partner with this artisan, organic artisan whole grain mill in Illinois called Janie's Mill, and we've been talking with farmers. Right now we're getting a lot of soft white wheat from a farmer up near Frankenmuth, and there's been a lot of talk about trying to set up a mill perhaps here, an artisan mill perhaps here in Michigan, but that's just very much in the gestation stage. But
Yeah.
and I don't know. And Janie's Mill is pretty well established now, and I don't know if they belong to any kind of guild. But it certainly
Yeah.
seems to make sense that that
Well,
maybe there
I
should
think
be
it's
an
that,
artisan.
regardless of the artisan. I mean, when
Artisan
Aaron
version
talks
of it
about
rather
like
than
members of the cheese guild, there are people on there. People might be like, "Oh, it's this large company that's there." You need the big and the small in the same boat, sometimes at the same time. Um, Economies of
Yeah.
scale of having those big people. Like you're helping them with their rep. They look cool on the outside because they're supporting these smaller local pieces, and the smaller businesses need it. I mean that. Coming from my socialist country of the UK, of having us high taxation and
100%.
supporting everything, that's the game, right? In the guild, as far as for you, it is, the bigger and the smaller help each other. The small are being more innovative. When we started the farm, I remember being like the scrappy little kid in the back, right? Like, while I might not have had the financial support, my creativity was off the chain because you got to be. That's the only way you're surviving that.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not trying to alienate anyone from the guild. You know, it's really we're trying to focus on great locally made Michigan products as much as possible, and the entire, you know, like I said, the entire infrastructure from the raw material that comes from the state of Michigan, preferably, because we want to support local, to, you know, the end product that goes to the customer. So that's we're in the middle of all that at the Cheese Guild, and especially, of course, as the one thread that's common is cheese and dairy. You know, that's the focus, and so yeah, there's a lot of folks that, like I said, you know, the distributors are hurt. Carmela, from the great retailers like, you know, Zingerman's Deli,
So
and
when
Monger's
you're
Cheese Provisions, and
in that
others,
kind of
the Cheese Lady,
headspace
to the
of
makers.
forming a guild, and I'm sure there's somebody who's listening to this. As Aaron liked to say, there was 10,000 people going to listen to this podcast tonight. Yeah, I'm at least, if I can get my 100 interaction and get some
At
emails
least,
back,
I'm
that would
sure.
be a happy little Kieran. When I talk about like what that means, you've got a cheese guild. Somebody might want to form their own, or they might want to join. Can you talk a little bit like those road barriers? Because if you said, Kieran, you should join, you should form an association for wedding planners. They're out there, they exist, or wedding venues, they do exist, and you can either join one or form one. The barrier most people are is like, oh, there's going to be a lot of work. There's a lot of paperwork to drive there. I mean, one of the things you said, again, off camera and off mic, was, you know, somebody's got to file the taxes. There's somebody or some entity that's responsible. Can you tell us just kind of a 2-3 minute like blurb of like what it is to be able to start it? Because it didn't sound as complicated or heartstrung as it could be.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think I know what I'm good at, and I know what I'm not good at, and I rely on outsourcing for the things that I'm not good at. And you know, we work with Varnum Law, you know, with some other entities that I'm a part of, and they have a deep bench of folks that handle, you know, nonprofit associations, and so they just gave us some consulting. It didn't cost much money at all, to have them say, all right, look, here's what you're telling us you want to do. Here's the entity you should form, and here's the paperwork. Let us do the paperwork for you. Here's where you sign. They're representing your best interests on that regard. And so, not too hard to get somebody. You know, you can go to LegalZoom and do that kind of stuff too. But there's only so much time in the day, right? And so I outsource those things. I'll pay for a little bit more, so I got someone who knows what they're doing, and take care of that for us. And so that was the startup. But you know, so you got to form a board on one of these, and I'm the treasurer of the board, so I handled our taxes this year, and that is basically just keeping track of the bank account, working with, you know, we work with Leper Accounting and Consulting here in town in Ann Arbor. They handled the guild's taxes. You know, we don't have a huge budget or a ton of expenditures right now in year one, and so pretty straightforward and simplistic. Really, you know, if someone wanted to dig into it, it's one of those things you could do on TurboTax. But again, I want it done right, and I don't have the time to research it, so we use a specialty group to do it. And so, so anyway, in terms of just like paperwork, infrastructure, those are the basics, right? Those are kind of the basics. You know, I see us though, like our success, and there was a guild, you know, established before, and I think it had some great members in it. It kind of fell apart at some point. I think what's going to make us successful is going to be just a focus on, you know, raising funds. You got to have some funds so that you can do things, you know, that you can form events with your members. And so that's, you know, we actually had a fundraiser with the deli, which was great at Gray Line. Sorry, I was drawing a blank. But I was at Gray Line's a great venue for such a thing. It was a lot of fun. You know, we had people from the general public who paid for tickets to come to that. You know, so that has to be. We've got to be, you know, focused on that and be, you know, wear that on our sleeve. Say, here's what we want to do.
Yeah, I wanted to ask too, for someone that works in the specialty cheese business and explains more to people about what the Michigan Cheese and Dairy Guild is sometimes. If people that are in the cheese business are interested in being involved in the guild, or even people that are just cheese enthusiasts or want to be involved in the guild, how can they go about doing that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you can go to micheeseguild.com and you can I think as little as 20 you can make a donation, any donation amount you want. I think $25 is where the memberships start up. There's a list of things that involves that you get for $25, and then for businesses you can go up to $200 and get, for example, you get access to our classes for like a discount. So if you're a business that's involved with the Cheese Guild, you'll get discounts for the PCQI class, the grants class, some of those kinds of things. We're planning a more formal, get together, as a group that you can be a part of. And so MI Cheese Guild, that's where kind of the
I know I'm gonna
information that we
jump
have
back,
come
but, like,
together and where you
when
can
you said you
subscribe
had some costs at
or
the beginning,
donate.
I'm assuming a person rather than a group of people probably paid those bills right away. Was that you? Was that a little group of you came together and say, "Hey, we'll throw a few $100 at this at the beginning," to get that kind of legal stuff done at the start? Because that's got to. I mean, I'm have no idea. Never formed one. I'm like, oh, that's got to be like $5 grand. I'm gonna be spending $5 grand right off the top to get this thing going.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. So we came together, the four founders, and we funded, what we needed to fund. And then, going to the National Restaurant Association show, you can get funding through foodexport.org, as well as MDARD. And so, in how that works is you pay for it and then you get money later. And so, we funded that, and then
Yeah, I think that's the
foodexport.org,
bit where I
they give
definitely
quite a bit of
have
funding.
that imagination. There's
So
when you talked about grants or funding that's out there, it's out there. It's most of us as businesses that don't have the time to go look or go find and ask. It's that put your hand up and ask for help.
that's right.
We don't even know
That's right.
how to put our hand up in some of those situations.
Right. Yeah, and so that is, again, I'd plug our folks at MDAR. They're great to work with, and they've helped us, down that path. And there is some legwork, that you've got to do, but it's worth it. And that's where collectively, as a group, like smaller businesses that need to engage in those things, they can come to the guild and we can give them some direction, right? So, I think Idle Farms is going to the Fancy Food Show in New York, which is another cheese maker, a part of the guild. And so, they got hooked up with foodexport.org and started that process for how do you get funding for your booth, right? And so, and by the way, foodexport.org gives us leads now for exporting opportunities. That that's a long runway, right? Like that's not something that just happens overnight. But I think that Michigan specialty cheeses should be in a market like that. And so how do we bring small producers into those kind of opportunities? It comes through the guild where you can offer kind of a portfolio of specialty products.
I'm interested in how you came around to deciding what kind of nonprofit you wanted to establish, because I know I spent many years working in museums, nonprofit museums, and as far as taxes go, we had a tax exempt status, and I know that there's different natures of nonprofits, but I would assume that your decision to go as a nonprofit opens up a lot more doors for you as far as grants go, state and federal grants and things like that. Did that go into your thought process at all?
Yeah, a little bit. What we did was, we described the impact that we wanted to make to people that specialize in the area, like consulting in this area at Varnum Law in this case, and then they said, look, if you want you want to be a trade organization, you want to raise money for for-profit entities that are going to be part of your organization, represent them, potentially, for lack of a better term, like market and lobby, then you want to have a 501c6. And then, again, because it's not my area of expertise, I go to, a CPA and tax consulting organization that, I've worked with in other entities, and just say, hey, help us make sure that we're compliant, right? And so that's how we did the taxes. So it's like legwork on, in this case, I'm the treasurer for the guild. So a little bit of work on my end in terms of like organizing what we need to get to them. Back to the original question, how much work does this entail to start something up? It's a little bit of work around tax season, but we've relied on people
Yeah,
that
I'm
really
imagining like when you
specialize in
talk
those
about
areas
like
and know what they're
the
doing,
other
so
things
that
that
we
go
can
along
focus
with
on
it
things
for
that we're
this
good at.
podcast, like getting a website up and running and doing those things. It's all time, it's money, it's effort. The ability to
Yeah,
use
yeah,
your original businesses that I know
yes,
you have
yeah,
a couple of things you're connected with, to be able to use those to help those things start up is very helpful. That's where that small independent cheesemaker that's been there for
right,
a year has no ability to get themselves out of it. That's where we need to help the next generation of all of those pieces out. Um,
yeah,
I think, Aaron, I said it earlier, but I think that coming back to you and the guild, get some more members in here next time we talk and be able to chat this journey. Because I think that beyond the cheese, and I wanted to talk about the cheese, but like what it is to help a group put their voice out there in a larger frame is really powerful, and not have to be a guild, whatever nonprofit you want to be, but what does it mean to come together as a community to help and support? Because that really is why, I mean, for us, we're a lot of Zingerman's folks sitting in the room today, but we're a community of businesses. The Cheese Guild is a community of businesses that have come together. And I think that if we can help folks hear about the benefits of being able to do that, what that looks like on a day-to-day basis, that's the power of like why we're having this podcast, why the Heartland Hot Dish, why the ability of the Great Lakes Foodways Alliance wants to be there, is to kind of put a spotlight back onto this community. For us, more than Michigan, for us as a larger organization that we're part of, wanting to be able to see that is really important. I guess, Aaron, for the last bit, do your shtick. I told you get a little promo push at the end of all of it. I think, what do you want the people that do listen to this, the next podcast that you're going to go on and talk about, like, what would you want for the next piece?
yeah. We're excited to come back. I think, to your point, this is an ongoing journey that's going to evolve, and I think that this is a great way for people to experiment, that may want to do something like this themselves with whatever their unique entity would be, right? With whatever their unique niche should and could and would be. So we're happy to come back and continue that dialogue. What people should expect from us is, hey, we're in our infancy, we're growing. You're going to see more educational opportunities in terms of engaging with local Michigan cheese. Social opportunities with local Michigan cheese. I look at our colleagues on the beer side of things, and just I think what a wonderful organization the Michigan
They've done great work. I mean,
Beer
really
Guild is, and
exceptional.
everything they provide for their members. Oh, fantastic! Yeah, and so we'd like to partner with them in different ways, and look to them as kind of a blueprint, of, hey, how should we evolve, and it's going to be a little bit different because our products are a little different, but how do we evolve and grow as a group, and continue to meet the needs of members. And right now, the needs are, hey, we need classes in certain areas, right? We need access to certain markets. We need access to certain marketing events. And those are the focuses right now. And I think, as we move forward, getting the retailers more involved in what we're doing, is I always want to make sure our retailers are happy with what the engagement is and the experiences in the guild. And I think there's some really unique ways we can do that. And so we're happy to come on and continue this conversation. I think you're going to see more and more of us kind of out in local
Yeah,
media,
I think the one thing
advertising some of the things
I
that
get
we've
to
got
deal with
coming up,
Arend
and we
regularly
hope we can engage with you.
at his work as the creamery. One of those things, especially cheesemaker, is like getting people past the thought that this cheese is just for a fancy cheese board once in a blue moon. We use many different cheeses, high-priced cheeses, as a main signature ingredient in a dish. It is as powerful as a great steak. It is as good as being able to have a really great piece of fish on there. For us, like when we've used your cheese to make creme brulees, when we've used your cheese as part of the main entree of a bread and butter pudding that's savory, those pieces of being able to turn. I think the last pie that we did for pine mash out at the farm was with your feta and your goat's cheese that we put inside one of those pies. That was the ingredient. It wasn't the other side of it. And I think one thing maybe we can discuss next time we get together is a little bit more about like how to change that frame of mind of it. It's just this. I am one of those people that use Lincolnshire Poacher's cheese as cheese on toast, and every cheesemonger's like, "Oh, really?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it tastes better." I think that ability of having that cheese out there in that world, and posh cheese on toast is posh cheese on toast. All right, my lovelies, thank you so much for joining us. I want to thank Arend, Ashlyn, and Lee for coming in. This has been great. I'm really I think 3 months, come back and check in. I think it'd be really great. Thank you so much. You have a wonderful day. We'll see you in the next podcast. Thanks,
100%.
guys.